I've been using it as my personal phone for almost half a year. And without a doubt, this Vivo X200 Ultra, which is only sold in China, has the most powerful cameras I've seen so far. How will it compare to the latest and most powerful iPhone 17 Pro Max? Here you are seeing some of the photos I've taken with the Vivo X200 Ultra during this half year of use. In fact, I already showed some of them in the review I did. For you, the full video is available on the channel. As you can see, some of them are simply stunning. Maybe Vivo, along with Oppo and especially Huawei, are the most powerful brands right now when it comes to photography. But on the other hand, Apple has launched its new iPhone 17 Pro Max, which I also dedicated a video to a week ago. You can find it on my channel, and it's the first iPhone with a trio of 48 megapixel sensors. Without a doubt, it's the best iPhone in terms of photography in history, but how will it compare to one of the current titans of the best photography? I'm not going to delay the introduction of this comparison video any longer, so let's go straight to the photos. Between the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Vivo X200 Ultra. But at the start of this comparison, I'm going to do a kind of experiment with you. Which one do you think is the smartphone on the right and which one is on the left? This photo clearly shows the differences between the sensors, so let's review them all, from ultra-wide angle to maximum zoom. What do you think about the colors? The interpretation, the post-processing, etc. are very different. The interpretations are very different between both. But okay, who do you think is the one on the right and who do you think is the one on the left? Leave it in the comments before it's revealed in 3, 2, 1. And there you have it. On the left is the iPhone 17 Pro Max and on the right is the Vivo X200 Ultra. Vivo actually has a much longer zoom than the iPhone 17 Pro Max, but for video, the opposite is true. You'll see later, but as I said, the interpretations with the Vivo are very different. I used face mode, which I find the most natural, but it still has a slight pop effect, similar to Samsung. That tree almost looks like autumn in the Vivo photo, while the iPhone appears more natural. But in the next photo, the facade of this building looks more yellowish on the iPhone, whereas the Vivo has a better white balance. As for the zoom, you can already see there's no comparison here. The Vivo sensor is much bigger, so it's able to capture more information, and that really shows in the zoom. Now let's change the setting and head to the beach. Notice the differences. Apple makes things look more yellow, while Vivo's white balance is closer to what I saw. Look, in fact, how do the dresses of these ladies walking on the beach look? And also the color of the sand and the sea? And now, we switch again. Let's go to more challenging lighting conditions. Here, with Apple, there was barely any light. Notice how both really enhance things. It even looks like it's daytime, and the details, for example, here on this cross, are clearer on the Vivo, especially as we zoom in. I think this is where the Chinese phone really stands out, especially in these shots, I mean in the zoom. In less favorable lighting conditions, the Vivo stands out and pulls away from the iPhone like a rocket. You can already see the differences. The iPhone shows a lot of noise and grain, while the Vivo's processing removes both. But there's a big question, and that's that I don't know if Vivo uses any generative artificial intelligence. I put it in airplane mode so it wouldn't connect to the internet or generate any artificial intelligence. Even so, you can already see that the facial features are a bit more defined. In person, they feel a bit more artificial, but without a doubt, the zoom is much clearer, sharper, and cleaner than that of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. As for the zoom, the Vivo can reach up to 70x digital, while the iPhone goes up to 40x. That's true, in the camera section, because when it comes to video, the iPhone can reach up to 24x, and the Vivo only up to 13.4x. You'll see the videos later because there's also a pretty noticeable difference between the two here. And as I mentioned in the iPhone 17 Pro Max review, the camera app has changed a lot. The one on the Vivo X200 Ultra is still much more complete, much more oriented towards professional use. By the way, I think the Vivo's camera button is better implemented than the other. Also, it's 100% haptic, a bit longer, and it gives you some feedback with a vibration that makes it feel much better. However, when we move on to the artificial intelligence of the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Vivo X200 Ultra, for example, to erase elements in images. You can already see that the Vivo takes much longer, but not only is the Vivo slower, it also does this thing that I find kind of ridiculous and makes no sense at all. It actually uses generative artificial intelligence to create a roof that, as you can see, doesn't really exist. It's something I don't understand and that you rarely see in other YouTube comparisons. Look, because when the Vivo phone is wet, the controller doesn't go crazy. You can interact with it without any problem. But when we switch to the iPhone 17 Pro Max, it goes completely crazy. I don't get how a phone this expensive would act like that, right? If you're going to use your phone, for example, in rainy conditions, you should know that with the iPhone, it's going to be a bit more difficult. And something surprising about the Vivo is that even with the screen wet, you can unlock it using the ultrasonic sensor it has. I also show this in the review that you have of the Vivo X200 Ultra. But let's move on to the rest of the cameras, including the macros and videos of the iPhone 17 Pro Max versus the Vivo X200 Ultra Vivo. For macros, the iPhone 17 Pro Max can only use the ultra-wide-angle camera, so it doesn't offer zoom for macro shots. And I find that pretty disappointing since the other brands do have a zoom that can get quite close, and therefore better macros. You can see this in the reviews of both phones. Vivo's is much better since the iPhone still uses the same macro from the iPhone 13 Pro Max with the ultra-wide-angle lens. Anyway, are you looking at the other photos yet? The interpretation is different. The Vivo is more pop, more vivid. Maybe the iPhone tends to make things a bit yellowish, and the Vivo tends to make them a bit more pink. In the photos, look at this bust. The rust looks better in the Vivo shot. But in the next photo, the shadows that the iPhone is able to bring out are really sublime. What do you think about these photos? Who do you think is the winner? Is there a clear winner? Or is it specifically just different interpretations? Look here, for example. This is what I was telling you about how Apple tends to make things look yellowish. Vivo has slightly better white balance, but in photos with poor lighting using the main sensor, I think the iPhone 17 Pro Max still performs very well. However, when we start using the zoom, the improvement progression on the Vivo is much better than on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. And now it's time to move on to the video section. By the way, have you already seen the camera modules? The one on the Vivo is much more pronounced, but I also think it looks more elegant than the new design of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. By the way, just so you know, several of the photos you're seeing will be available on Telegram, so you can download the photos at the highest resolution and see the differences between each smartphone down to the smallest detail. I'll leave the Telegram link below in the video description. And before we move on to the video topic, I have to warn you that the Vivo X200 Ultra is not compatible with Adobe Premiere, which is what I use to edit these videos. I thought they were going to fix it in future updates, but that hasn't been the case. That slight imbalance, which you'll see in the Vivo video, is due to an incompatibility with Adobe Premiere, but in reality it doesn't have that imbalance, that jelly-like vibration. And this is how the video would look. This would be on the camera, the ultra-wide angle lens at full high definition at 60 frames per second. This is how its stabilization would be and how its microphones would sound. Now let's move on to the main camera. Notice the transition between both. Come on. Let's go to the zoom. And finally, let's go to the maximum zoom. This is while I'm walking. And this would be 4K resolution at 60 frames per second. Ultra wide angle would now be the switch to the main camera. The zoom in. And the maximum zoom while I'm walking. And this would be its resolution at 4K at 120 frames per second. By the way, Vivo lets you record at this resolution in 4K at 120 frames per second with the ultra-wide angle, the main camera, and the zoom. On the other hand, the iPhone 17 Pro Max only lets you record at this frame rate with the main camera and the zoom, but it doesn't allow it with the ultra-wide angle. I think when it comes to video, the iPhone is the clear winner and always stands out. Not only because it is compatible with Adobe Premiere, but also because of the bit rate it can handle, and because of all the more professional options it offers in this area. But the final decision is yours. Which one did you like more? The Vivo X200 Ultra or the iPhone 17 Pro Max? Here we go with the prices. As you can see, the Vivo ranges from 860.04 euros for the 256 gigabyte version up to 1,190.86 euros. It's probably even cheaper now. I'll leave the link below in the video description. As for the iPhone 17 Pro Max, it's between 1,469 and 2,469. Therefore, it's quite a bit more expensive. And you already know that iPhones don't lose value on the other hand, especially in the blue and orange colors. The iPhone 17 Pro Max is showing some issues, as it scratches very easily with the new aluminum design they've chosen. But well, without a doubt, we're looking at two beasts. Some of the best cameras, two of the best smartphones, which currently take the best photos and videos. You already know that I leave some of the best photos I've taken on my Telegram so you can compare them in detail. If you like this video, share it, give it a like, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments along with your verdict. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video. Take care and see you soon.